Episode 44, The Game of Adversity.
Welcome to Creative Success.
Fueling success with creativity. It's the Creative Success Podcast with Tanner Gers.
Designed to build inspiration for life. Delivering the messages and ideas for today.
And I'm Tanner Gers. What can we create together today? In this episode, creators, I'm sitting down with my colleague, fellow podcaster, and friend, Nick Dinardo. We go deep, creators, talking about adversity, the adversity in his life, and much more, all so you can step into your creative success.
Hi, Derek Gale here, and if you want to jumpstart your digital business online, check me out at entrepreneurignited.com or our Entrepreneur Ignited podcast. You're listening to the Creative Success Show with Tanner Gers.
Thanks, Derek, for that awesome introduction. And today's episode, creators, is brought to you by HostGator.com. HostGator's web hosting is definitely one of the most robust, easy to use, customizable web hosting platforms that you can host your blog on. From one-click WordPress installs, to their drag-and-drop website builder, to the 45-day, no questions, money-back guarantee, HostGator brings your online presence to the next level without a next-level budget. You can get started today with all these perks and 40% off your entire web hosting package just by going to HostGator.com/Tanner or using Tanner at checkout. Isn't it about time that you got online? Today's guest has been online for a little while now, but as you'll see, has been preparing to deliver value and help others his entire life. We discussed everything from adversity to helping others overcome it, his role models growing up, developing tools and relationships to get through adversity, and so much more. We went longer than usual, but the content was so meaningful to me, the conversation so rich, I broke it up into 2 digestible episodes for your listening pleasure. Speaking of pleasure, it would be incredibly awesome if you took 2 seconds right now and shared this episode. Do it right from the podcast app on your phone, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, because we're on all those channels now, or from the complete show notes page where you can get all the links to connect with our guest at creativesuccessshow.com/44. I've got all the clickable quotes and messages from this episode, making it super uber easy to share this content to Facebook, Twitter, or whatever your social flavor is. I really appreciate you sharing, Creation Nation, and growing our community of creators. It really means a lot to me, and I also appreciate everyone who's signing up for the Success Program newsletter. We're also planning more upgrades to the site. I'm putting together the content for some upcoming webinars, and we are just continuing to grow. I'm loving the ride. So again, thank you for sharing. Thanks for being here with us today. And now, let's get into today's episode. Today's guest on Creative Success believes adversity creates opportunity. Powerful, creators, because it's true. And he should know, because he's dealt with adversity his entire life. At 7, he mentally and physically battled being thrown from his home, his parents divorcing, and then, for a year, slept on the floor of a one-room apartment. How crowded have you ever felt living in adverse conditions? Well, his family shared a kitchen with 17 people. Today, he's an entrepreneur, a consultant, and public speaker focused on adversity, personal growth, and education. He's also authored the book, The Game of Adversity, which he might know a thing or two on. Additionally, you can catch him interviewing experts and survivors of adversity on his podcast, Sweet Adversity, which can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and on his website, nickdinardo.com. And that is where you'll also find his free 5-day course to help you overcome overwhelm and sustain high-class performance. Nick Dinardo, thank you so much for joining us today on Creative Success.
Tanner, thanks so much for having me. It's really, I'm excited to be here, man.
It's quite the honor. I was on your podcast a while ago, a few moons back, and I really love what you're doing because you're addressing something that we all face. It's inevitable. And I want to get to how you faced adversity. Do you mind bringing us back there? I'm sure it's tough to talk about, but can you bring us back to when you were 7 and what you were going through? Describe that for creators.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you gave the framework of it pretty well in your intro. I appreciate that. But so at 7 years old, grew up in a middle class family. Had a great mother, great father, younger brother. My dad owned a garage door business. He owned his own business. He was an entrepreneur. My mother worked from home. I mean, well, she was pretty much a stay-at-home mom at that point.
Sure.
And at 7 years old, couldn't have been more average, really. It was middle class, very average. And within months, that all turned on its head. My dad sold his business, really didn't know how to use that success that he had, and he ended up spending a lot of his money. We went bankrupt, and we lost the house. My mom had a bipolar episode right around that exact same time, potentially from a lot of the stress from the money issues that they had.
Sure.
And she ended up in a mental hospital.
Wow.
And my parents divorced. And right at that time, I spent time at my dad's apartment. Spent time with aunts and uncles. My mom ended up getting out, getting healthier, and we ended up in. It wasn't a halfway house, but it was this apartment building, like you said, 17 other families. We shared a kitchen downstairs, and we were in this one bedroom where we had one bed, and my mom would sleep in the bed. We wanted her to sleep in the bed, and I would sleep on the floor many nights. And I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, this can't be the way. I mean, months before, hold on, we're in this 3,000 square foot house. Now, all of a sudden, I'm sleeping on the floor. And I wasn't feeling sorry for myself at that point. I guess I just was already thinking, it was the beginning of thinking who are models that I can look to? I didn't have this fully fleshed out in my head at the time, but I was looking for people who had dealt with failure, had dealt with tough circumstances, and how they responded, how they were humble people, how they became successful. I didn't know what success kind of meant at that point, but how did they become successful in whatever they did? I turned to sports at that point. I know that you have a ton of experience being an athlete yourself.
Yeah.
But I turned to sports as that thing to show me people who were doing some amazing things despite some circumstances that they didn't use as a crutch. They didn't use it as an excuse. They used it as fuel to help them achieve what they wanted to achieve. And one of those guys was Barry Sanders to me. He's the first one that I think of.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's my favorite probably athlete of all time.
Oh my gosh. Keep going.
Yeah, well, it sounds like he might be one of your favorite athletes too.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, it was mostly because he was an amazing football player.
Yes.
Number one, I think he's top 2 running backs of all time. But the most amazing thing about him was how humble he was. He would give the football to the ref after every touchdown that he had. And then people gave him crap when he retired at the age of 30. But I thought it was amazing. He had done what he had done, and he felt fulfilled. And I love that. He wasn't one of these guys that just kept playing because he felt like his self-worth was tied to it. He had done he had accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, and he went back to Detroit, had his $50,000 house, had his family that he was focused on, and that was it. And those are the types of people that I responded to. And I don't know why, but I just did, and that's the type of person that I try and be now. But anyway, it's just amazing the things that experience does to you and how you respond to it. So I've always been interested in what adverse situations do to people and how we can build the tools to be able to respond in a positive way to actually be productive and achieve what we want to achieve.
Yes, having those tools is incredibly important, creators. And I think for me, Nick, Barry Sanders was one of those tools. I looked to him. I resonated with him. I had his shoes when I was a freshman in high school, and he had such an influence on my life. I was looking for something to model, and I'm so glad to hear you say, I think it's probably the first time I've ever heard another person say, mirror those kind of feelings about, my hero. But I'm thinking about what you must have been going through, because when you are that young as a kid, you don't really have those tools. You don't really have that experience. And as you already illustrated, you didn't really have that guidance or leadership. You were looking for it. I've got to ask, Nick, when your mom was in the hospital, how'd that make you feel?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I obviously didn't have the tools then either, but I think that experience builds those tools over time. I think you can learn from other people's experiences and mistakes and failures and good things and bad things. I think that's a great way to learn, but it's tough to replace the things that you go through and how you can respond to them. You told me your story on my podcast, which is an amazing story. For me, I felt angry. I felt I don't know how to describe it. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I felt sorry for myself. I felt sorry for us, but then very quickly, because of the support system, I was lucky. A lot of people go through those situations. They don't have people around them to pick you up. And I had that. So my father was my role model, and then became my best friend. As we became older, he passed away. But we had my aunt, who was unbelievable. My uncle, my dad's brother, ended up picking up a lot of the slack. We just had all these people around us that helped us, and I don't know where I would be, where my mental state would have been if I didn't have them around. So I just have to say that community is just such an amazing thing. And obviously, when you get older, you can start to control that community. You can figure out the people you want to be around who are going to make you better and that you can help, to get better every day. But I felt angry and pissed off, and I couldn't believe that this was happening to us. And, over time, I think if you start looking in the right directions, you can get pulled in the right directions. You can get pushed in the right directions. And that's what happened to me.
Well, even though your family made up a significant piece of that, one of the words that I am taking from what you just said is community, and being in the right community. And creators, whether you are departed from your family or not, get yourself surrounded by the foundational individuals who you can call your community, who you can reach out to for support, because I know in my life it made all the difference. And I would not be where I am today without that, specifically my mom. And for Nick, his family was there, and it's amazing how everybody can come together, this community, to support this mission of pushing through the adversity. I can imagine that losing your best friend was pretty tragic. How long ago did that happen?
That happened in 2009. So he died at 58 years old. He had a bunch of health issues. He didn't take care of himself. He was a big Italian guy. He kind of looked like James Gandolfini from The Sopranos. So he was one of those. Yeah, he was one of those big Italian guys, lovable guy. He taught me everything about how to be a great person and a great man, how to look people in the eye, shake hands with people, open doors for women, respect your elders, that sort of stuff. I think what he struggled with was his own self-worth. I think he definitely struggled with some depression that we just never knew about. He was a fantastic athlete, played baseball at UMass. He was drafted by the Yankees, could have played football, but he ended up, getting into, just like young kids do. I think he wanted to have fun. He drank, he partied, and he didn't live up to his expectations. And I think he beat himself up about that now that I look back on it over time. But he was always loved by everyone. He would love to pay a tab. He loved buying drinks for people. He loved buying dinner. And he always gave me kisses and told me he loved me. But what I try and do is be the best things that I saw in my father. And then I look at the negative things and I try and make sure that I'm not those things. And I think that's all we can do with our parents, right? I mean, we know if we have great parents, we try and model those behaviors. But if we don't have great parents, if we don't have a good support system, I know this is easier said than done, but I think that we can look to them and say, I'm not going to be like them, and these are the ways that I'm going to work towards being the best person that I can be. And I think it's just the push and pull of those two things, the great things and the negative things.
Do you have one child right now?
I do, yes. 3-month-old. He's almost 3 months. He's turning 3 months on Thursday.
Well, I am very happy that he has such an incredibly centered, heart-centered father raising him and guiding him and showing him the ropes and doing, I'm sure, many of the things that your father has done for you. So I look forward to meeting him one day. When my mother and I became completely submersed with one another in the wake of my accident, we became best friends. Yeah. And so I can completely relate to you and the relationship you developed with your father. That's pretty fantastic. And then, what was that like, though, in the wake of the storm and your mom coming out? What was that like? How did that relationship develop, if it did?
Do you mean after she had the bipolar episodes?
Yeah, when you're living on the floor in that one bedroom place, in that one single room, and did you guys grow closer together there as well?
Yeah, so this is a really great question. I'm glad that you're asking these questions because nobody really pushes on this. So I tell my mom this all the time. I learned so much from her that she doesn't even realize. In the fact that she's told me that when you are bipolar, it's actually easier and more fun to not be on your medication because you go through these manic states that are otherworldly, like you're completely out of the rat race, where you just don't, where you feel like less of a person in the rat race, and outside of it, you can be this whole other person. And why not? Why would you ever take these drugs to bring you back down when you can feel this way? So she went through this a couple of times. Once at this point, a smaller one when we were very, very young, and then when I was about 14 years old. And at that time, you go through these stages, I'm sure, if you are depressed or have any sort of mental illness or physical thing, I'm sure. But she felt like she didn't need the medication. She could get over it herself. But she came to a point where purpose really drove her to say, I am going to take this medication in the best interest of my kids. It's not about me. It's not about what I think I can do. The medication will help me to bring my kids up the right way. And I watched her struggle with it. I resented her at times. But for the most part, I watched her be consistent. Went and found a job when who wanted to hire a woman that was dealing with these sorts of things. She lost so many friends who didn't understand the disease because it doesn't show itself. And it's not like you broke your arm. You're dealing with things inside your brain. And I watched this, and she continues to just grow and just to work. She puts in the work every day, and she works as a social worker. So she works with mentally disabled people. So she's taught me way more than than she even realizes, and she doesn't give herself any credit. She thinks that she, caused all these issues. But I actually think that she is my differentiator. That those things that happen to me are what makes me able to help people in a way that other people can't. And I think you're probably the same way, Tanner. It's like once you get over that initial, oh my God, how the fuck does this stuff happen to me? Excuse my language. You can take that out. But after that, it's you are the unique person that now can spread the message that you couldn't have spread before. And that's what adversity does. That's what being resilient can do if you have the right tools. You can start to use these things for good rather than just letting them kind of beat you down.
We are talking creators with Nick Dinardo from nickdinardo.com. And buddy, first off, please express yourself with whatever words you feel necessary. I love that you're in the moment and you're passionate and you're expressing yourself openly and vulnerably. It's just a word. It's something I think, society puts this negative connotation on the words like fuck, because for whatever reason, that's society's perspective about that word, when I find it to be such an expressive word that sometimes no other word can really illustrate how I'm feeling, or, whether it's positive or negative, with that word. It makes me think of this one time. I was a senior. I was a senior in high school or getting ready to be a senior, and we were in the passing league football tournament, and it's the championship game. And, in passing league creators, there's no linemen. It's just the skill positions. It's the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers on offense, the linebackers and defensive backs on defense. And it's all pass plays. And, it's coming down to the end of the game, and it's tied up, and we're on offense, and, long ball, I catch it, score touchdown, and I turn around and I go, fuck yeah. And then you have 4 seconds to throw the ball in passing league, and so apparently we had just surpassed that 4 seconds, so we had to come back and do it again. But we ended up winning that game and won that tournament. But getting back to what you were saying about your mom and recognizing what her purpose is, and creators, I think that we can get comfortable with where we're at. We enjoy life as it is, and why should we push ourselves to change? And I think purpose, when you really find what that is for you, you can really change anything. It becomes a choice, and your mom made the choice to put you first. I think that had to be pretty substantial.
Absolutely.
Make you feel pretty good about yourself. How do you call on that? I mean, how has that influenced you? I can only imagine how it's influenced you as a young father, as a husband, as a person. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of my favorite books of all time is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
You probably read that book, but it's you want to talk about purpose and what Viktor Frankl found. I mean, he was a student of the traditional.
Thank you so much, Nick, for being so open, so vulnerable with Creation Nation. And be sure to stay tuned for part 2 of this episode. This has definitely been one of my most favorite conversations of the year. And creators, if you like how we're going deeper, if you like the way that I am trying to pull back the curtain on the lives of our guests, let me know about it. You know how to find me via the contact form on the site, and you can always share this episode, tagging me in the process. I get a lot of Facebook friend requests, but I'm a little hesitant to accept the request from people that I haven't spoken with or have been introduced. So if that's you, creators, inviting me to connect, just shoot me a message and let me know that you want to connect. I love connecting with everyone on Creation Nation. So just shoot me a message ahead of time and introduce yourself. As a heads up, I'm going to be producing more content for you creators. If you haven't noticed already, be on the lookout for Motivation Mondays, a shorter episode where I share a motivational quote to help you get your week off to a great start. And of course, we've got the book review episodes coming to you on a regular now, which I love creating because not only is it awesome sharing that content, but it keeps me on track with reading, growing, and learning more on a regular basis. I'm also bouncing around ideas for some other episodes, so stay tuned for all that greatness. I love you all. Thank you so much for sharing this episode, spending time with me today, and until next time, I am Tanner Gers, your partner in adversity and creative success.